President Nikias, Dean Baransoni, faculty members, religious directors, graduating students, families, friends, and trustees. It's a great honor for me to be speaking to you just now. As I was coming to Los Angeles 2 days ago from Saudi Arabia, I was thinking what I should be saying today, and my mind automatically drifted to more than 50 years ago when I was graduating from college. And then, as usually happens, your memory goes back and drifts away. So I remembered my first moments of awareness as a child, my mother singing stories of the great myths of Mahabharata and Ramayana, and every evening leaving us with a story at a very pivotal point, cliffhanger as they call it today. And then she would say to us, now you complete the story tomorrow, dream up a good ending and make sure that the demons are vanquished and the heroes will win. So very early in my life, I started to think that every problem had a creative solution because of my mother's great storytelling. At the same time, she said frequently to me, she said, you can have anything you want when you grow up if you are committed to something bigger than yourself. Bigger than yourself. I remember my father was an army doctor, a cardiologist, but on weekends he would see patients free of charge. We were in a small town in India called Jabalpur, and patients would come to see him from all over the country. And he wouldn't charge them. My mother would cook food for the patients. And before they left, they would make sure that these people had enough money for their train or their bus or whatever transportation they came in with. My father was a very astute diagnostician, but he always prayed for his patients with my mother. So those are some great memories that came to me. But more importantly than anything else, I remember the phrase, be committed to something bigger than yourself. So 2 years ago, I was in Durban. I know that Warren's wife is sitting there. She's from Durban. And I got a call, strangely enough, which I didn't expect, from Mahatma Gandhi's granddaughter, Ela, who lives in a little house outside of Durban. And of course, for those of you who don't know, before Gandhi became the Mahatma, the great soul, he spent many years, 22 years, in South Africa as a barrister. He had graduated as a lawyer from England, and he started his career fighting for the indigent laborers that had been imported there from India, helping them find their legal rights and actually initiating the civil rights movement in South Africa. And at that time, he had a close friend who lived almost across the street from this house that I went to. And his name was John Dubey. For those of you who haven't heard of John Dubey, he was a contemporary of Gandhi, born around the same time, similar parallel careers. And John Dubey later became the president of what was to be ANC, the African National Congress, which ultimately liberated South Africa. And after this close friendship between the two, Gandhi, at the age of 45, 46, decided to go to India and start the Indian National Congress. He was luckier than John Dubey. Apartheid was not present in India. The regime in South Africa was much more harsh. So Gandhi, of course, as you know, history tells us, liberated India from British colonialism in a peaceful manner. And who read his biography? Martin Luther King Jr., who then started the American Civil Rights Movement. Who read that? Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison. And on the day that he got out after the election, after he cast his vote, he actually went to the grave of John Dewey 100 years later, 1994, saluted the grave and said, "Mr. President, I have come to inform you that South Africa is free today." 100-year association between luminaries who stood for something and committed themselves to something greater than themselves, connected through this chain of relationship over decades. And of course, you know that Nelson Mandela was the inspiration for Obama, our last president. See how this chain moves from a little suburb outside of Durban and closes the loop right there outside of Durban. Most of you probably don't know this story, but we are shaped by these stories, by our mentors, by our parents, by the great heroes of mythology, religion, and were it not for these great stories that have existed and inspired humankind for thousands of years, we wouldn't be here today. In fact, our brain, our cerebral cortex, grew exponentially when we started to tell stories. So, my dear friends, I want to ask you today, as you finish one chapter of your life, one chapter of your life is closing tomorrow, a new chapter is starting. I would like to ask you, what is your story? What is your backstory? What is your current story? Where do you intend to go with your future story? What will happen when you get to the mountaintop? And will you come back to inspire others? Because a life that is not examined is a life not worth living. In the next few minutes, I want to share with you just 7 little steps that you could take to embark on the most heroic story that you can imagine for yourself. Step 1, become the best listener in the world. There's a conversation going on right now in the world, and it's a scary conversation. War, terrorism, eco-destruction, extinction of species, poison in our food chain, climate change. That's part of the conversation. But there's also another story alongside with that. Are we going to allow extinction, the 6th extinction, to take place? Or can we together create a story for a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world? Because as Mahatma Gandhi said, if we can't be the change that we want to see in the world, then we'll end up being angry, active, angry peace advocates, peace activists who are angry, and that's a contradiction in itself. So listen to the zeitgeist of the moment. Create a vision for yourself. Get together with people who want to share your vision. Bond with them emotionally. Complement their strengths with your strengths. There's nothing that cannot be accomplished when we share vision together, when we bond emotionally, when we complement each other's strengths. And I know my son is sitting there in the audience, and he's got a series called Religion of Sport. I'll tell you, any sport team that wins has those characteristics: shared vision, emotional bonding, and complementing strengths. We have to do that together. It is your journey now that is going to help us go in that direction. Even more important, be authentic, have integrity, be responsible for your health and the health and joy of others. Recognize that the most valuable things, even though this is a great university and you're going to get a great degree, but the most valuable things in life don't come with degrees, they don't come with credentials. The most valuable things in life come with your ability to create relationship, your ability to nurture love, your ability to have empathy and compassion and equanimity and joy, your desire to evolve in the direction of truth, goodness, harmony, beauty, peace, and joy. Without that, it is a futile experience. Academia is great because it brings us knowledge, but unless you self-reflect, unless you ask yourself, who am I? What do I want? What is my purpose? What am I grateful for? What kind of world do I want to live in? What kind of world do I want future generations to live in? What am I doing to manifest that dream? Does my daily activity in some way reflect the dream that I have? If we don't ask ourselves those questions, then our life will not have been fruitful. Reflecting back now, 50 years ago or more, I graduated, and it seems to have gone by like a dream. The German philosopher Wittgenstein said, "We are asleep, our life is a dream." We are asleep, our life is a dream, but once in a while, we wake up enough to know that we're dreaming. So what do we wake up to? We wake up to the awareness in which all experience happens. This is an experience right now. But the first part of this evening is already over. It's a dream. 5 minutes ago is already over. It's a dream. A minute ago is already over. By the time I get to the end of my sentence, the first part is over. You can't grasp the past, you can't grasp the future, and the present is over as soon as it is born. So we must wake up. Wake up to the presence in which this is all happening. Experience is in time, but the awareness in which experience happens is not in time. So I'd just like you to try something right now. As you're listening to me right now, just turn your attention to that which is having this experience. Be aware of that in which this experience is happening. That awareness is the only real thing about you. Everything else arises and subsides in every moment of time. Hold on to that. Hold on to the presence in which experience happens. And recognize that experience is in time, but you, that which has the experience, is not in time. The same awareness when you were a baby, the same awareness when you were a teenager, now, and because it's not in time, we are told by the great luminaries of all time, the sages of the Upanishads, that this awareness that you are is not subject to birth or death. Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, water cannot wet it, wind cannot dry it, weapons cannot shatter it, fire cannot burn it. You are that. All this is that, and that alone is. So without that self-awareness, life could go by as a dream, but to wake up to it is the goal of our life. Waking up to presence, waking up to spirit, waking up to our soul cannot be done through a system of thought, be it religion or philosophy or theology or science. Because reality is not a system of thought. Reality is that which gives rise to thought. And as we trace thought back to its source, we realize it is also the source of perception, it is also the source of feeling, it is also the source of everything that happens in our life, our personal relationships, our social interactions, that which we call the world, the universe. It arises and subsides in our own being. And that is the highest intelligence. Being is the highest intelligence. Feeling comes after that. Feeling that we call love, compassion, joy, equanimity. And then thinking, but not dogmatic thinking, but living the questions. And if we live the questions, then life moves us into the answers. And finally, the last is doing. We're living in a society today where everybody is doing, bundles of conditioned reflexes and nerves constantly being triggered by people and circumstance into predictable outcomes. We're algorithms, we are biological robots, because we have not woken up to that in which all experience happens. So I shall close now. Wish you good luck, Godspeed, but don't forget that God's language is silence, and everything else is poor translation. Thank you.